Okay, so I want to talk about my issue with African immigrants taking roles of historical ADOS figures. I have two main issues with it. My first issue with it is that ADOS were just about to reach a peak or apex in media representation. It's basically been this very difficult journey to get to this point. And just when we were about to reach the peak of that, African immigrants came in and started taking those roles. Basically, for hundreds of years, if we go back to the when US cinema was really moving in the US, ADOS were basically invisible. Then we started in the stereotypical slave and servant roles. We moved to the stereotypical thug and villain roles. And then we were just like the background characters, the one dimensional characters. Then we started getting smaller budget roles. We started getting some dark skin representation. We moved to shows starring us, to more three dimensional characters. And then we started getting higher budget films and we started getting uh, ADOS movie stars. And now to the point where we're getting high box office, getting high box office receipts, and to the space where we could start having high budget historical figure roles. And just when we were about to do that, African immigrants come in and kind of start picking the fruits of that, of the centuries of labor. Now, I don't have issues with African immigrants taking general roles. This is about historical figures and icons that were ADOS. And I I've heard pushback against this that ADOS have played historical Native African roles, but those were US productions. ADOS never went to Africa and started snatching up roles from Africans in Africa and playing historical figures there. But I'm less concerned about this now because we still were able to play historical figures and icons. And in the future, it seems like we will still have a chance to play some of those historical figures. Okay, the second reason why I don't like it is part of a bigger issue. Some of you may have noticed that a lot of African, British, Australian actors are overrepresented in US media. If you look at big tech and the technology industries in the US, a lot of these computer programming jobs, they're being filled with East Asian and South Asian immigrants. If you look at nursing, a lot of the nursing jobs are filled with Filipino immigrants. If you look at the education system, you'll see a lot of the professors are filled with immigrants. So, what is happening? Basically, our country has decided to make a exploited cast. Our country decided to turn native US Americans into this caste or class to be exploited. For instance, our country is pushing a lot of the population to get college degrees. And when these people graduate, they can't find jobs because a lot of these jobs are filled by these immigrants that are prioritized and preferred and who had a back door to these jobs. So these graduates basically become debt slaves. that have to take these lower paying jobs that they're stuck and they get into these debt cycles. And then on the other side, you have the country intentionally criminalizing people for the prison industry because that's what it is. It is an industry and it needs bodies. So our country intentionally criminalized people, especially ADOS, so it can have prison laborers. So now our country has this lower class of people that can be exploited. But the country still needs this professional workforce, right? So what the country does is it looks at these other countries, it gets the and makes an alliance with the elites of those countries. All countries have these elites where families were able to climb the pyramids in those countries, and then those countries maintain connections with other elites. So now the U.S. is the higher class elites in the U.S., who are typically white caste, are making alliances with these elites from other countries, which is why they prefer these immigrants. So you basically have this loyalty bond going on, this winner circle of people who make up this higher caste. So, and higher caste. So that's where some of the animosity with African immigrants come in because a lot of them are consciously aware of this caste system. This is why you'll see a lot of African immigrant actors being caught talking down and degrading ADOS because they're trying to send a signal to their new allies like, I'm not like them, I'm like you. This is another reason why British African actors, are being preferred and prioritized. A lot of them go through a very specific training, this training that is very, this Western European type of actor training. Basically, these immigrants are willing to assimilate into the white caste culture. So these that's another reason why they're being prioritized. It's part of this a light assimilation, this white caste assimilation. And a lot of Africans are playing the field. They know this, they're aware of this. When you try to challenge this, that's when they toss out xenophobia, or they try to silence you by calling for African unity, even though they're unifying with these elites, because the white cast, there's white cast factions in the U.S. that are elite, and they're trying to maintain this elitist system. And then there's a lot of other different sinister aspects to this. So you're seeing a lot of ADOS happy with this British African, or this African immigrant representation, because we're saying, look at us, we're on the screen. But a lot of ADOS are not understanding that that's just their way of winning. Like, that a lot of ADOS aren't getting that the U.S. has plans for us. There's pre-plans for us. Okay, they can use these African elitists to make it seem like we're getting representation, while we're being set up for slaughter. Okay, we're being set up to be criminalized and abused for the prison industry. So just the fact that there's so much sinister stuff going on, and that a lot of these African immigrants are aware of this, and a lot of ADOS are aware of this too. That's why you have a lot of ADOS actors willing to defend their casting choices when they're prioritizing them, because once you reach that elitist circle, that winner circle, your values change, right? Um, a lot of these a lot of these ADOS that voted for Trump um, found are like middle class, upper middle class, right? Once they got a taste of that money, that influence, that power, they're forming new alliances. So basically, that's my issue. Our country is trying to its best to maintain the caste system and to maintain debt slaves and prison laborers while making it seem like we're being represented, and when that's really not the case.